What's up, everybody? It's your guy Ike Jones, and we are back with another edition of LAUB Town. It is Auburn, it is Tennessee, and we got to talk about the big matchup in Knoxville today. Y'all know how we do. Let's get straight to it. Let's go inside the town.
The Auburn Express.
You are now listening to The War Report Law Town Podcast. With your boy Ike Jones.
What's going on, everybody? Hopefully everybody is having a great day so far. We are here to talk about this game, Auburn versus Tennessee, and it's going to be a tough matchup today. Listen, Tennessee has one of the best defenses in the country, not just the SEC, but in the country. Auburn's coming in without one of their leading scorers in Jalen Williams, who's listed as probable for today. Could potentially see duty if necessary, but definitely are not leaning on that fact if you're an Auburn fan. And he would probably be limited if he does play. But this would make the second time in as many seasons that Auburn has made the trip to Knoxville down one of their front court players. If you all remember last year, Dylan Cardwell did not make the trip to Knoxville. So Auburn was shorthanded in the post in that game. In a game where, being able to control the boards and the painted area is going to be important. Being without one of your big men in that contest is always going to be a detriment to your team, even without Dylan Cardwell, mostly because he's not really a scoring threat. Auburn was able to keep that game close, and it came down to a last-second missed call. Let's just call it what it is. It was a missed call, but Auburn barely lost that game last year. I mean, it was, as Bruce Pearl called it, a rock fight last year, a game that didn't get into it was barely into the 40s last season. So this year, I expect it to be more of the same. You got two really good defensive teams, but the question here is going to be, is Auburn going to be able to have enough firepower to take down the Vols inside of Knoxville? A team that has struggled on the road in Auburn, made a good showing on the road versus, again, I have to be honest about it, not a good defensive team in Georgia. Really, the teams where Auburn has played well on the road have been the teams that have not performed great defensively. When you think about Arkansas, when you think about going to Vanderbilt, and then going and getting the win at Ole Miss. Ole Miss probably the best defensive team that Auburn has won against on the road in the SEC. Tennessee ain't none of them. Listen, this is a different defensive animal. Georgia definitely not a defensive juggernaut this season. So Auburn's going to have to be more efficient offensively. But let's take a look at the head-to-head versus the with the two teams. Points for in favor of Auburn on the season by about almost 3 points per game, really closer to 2 points per game. Tennessee has the better defense on the season. Again, Tennessee's one of the best defensive teams in the country. Auburn top 10 defense as well. So, expect this to be a defensive battle by the numbers. We talk about field goal percentage. Auburn slightly better in their field goal percentage. Tennessee slightly better on the boards. Assists per game about even, really. Auburn slightly better on the average assists per game. Auburn slightly better in blocks per game by almost a full block or by a full block per game. And then Tennessee a little bit better in steals per game. This Tennessee team is definitely able to go and get takeaways. Identical records on this season. Tennessee has the slight edge in SEC play, and this is a game that's going to factor in heavily into the matchup or in the final tabulations when you get into who's going to capture the regular season title. Coach Rick Barnes has done a great job of keeping Tennessee perennially in that top realm, and Auburn is trying to stay in that space as well. Game tips off at 6 p.m. today on ESPN2. 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. The ESPN matchup predictor says Tennessee has the best chance to win, 67.1% in favor of Tennessee. And Tennessee has been favored to win this game for weeks, right? Like, this isn't new. That matchup predictor has not moved much. And in fact, it might have got a little bit worse in the prediction now that Jalen Williams is potentially not going to be a factor in this game. But if you're an Auburn fan, you are encouraged by what you saw from Chad Baker-Mazara and Chaney Johnson in the absence of Jalen Williams. Chad having to play more minutes, stepping into the starting lineup. Chaney Johnson stepping into the starting lineup and playing more minutes. And then, Aiden Holloway having a resurgence of his ability to shoot the basketball in the last game. Definitely going to be needed on the road in Tennessee. This is going to be a raucous environment. Your boy Ike Jones will be present there. You see, I'm already ready for the road trip. I'm in my gear ready to hit the road as soon as I'm done with this. But when you look at the stat leaders for each of these respective teams, nothing really changed from the Auburn perspective as far as who's leading. But Dalton Connect, of course, is the guy for Tennessee offensively. He is the revelation of the offseason in terms of guys you didn't expect and now can't stop talking about. He is out there leading them 20.1 points per game. Jonas Adu, another guy who has come on for them, he is at 7.6 boards per game, doing a really good job on the boards. Tennessee overall does well on the boards. Then, the veterans of that team, Zakai Ziegler, with assist and steal leads there, 5.8 assists per game, which is amazing. I mean, he is really a floor general out there for Tennessee, and has 2 steals per game, which puts him as one of the best thieves in the league. And then Jonas Adu is the leader in blocks for them as well. So this is a team that definitely has multiple guys out there that can do multiple things for them. Looking forward to seeing how Auburn rises to the task to be able to shut down the different things that Tennessee wants to present as far as how they attack you offensively, and then how they're going to be able to defensively come and bother Auburn. And those are going to be the guys that you really want to look for. Particularly Dalton Connect is going to have everyone's attention. But Ziegler, it's really, there are guys, I say this for Auburn often when you talk about Janai Broome versus Jalen Williams. Janai Broome may be the leader on the team as far as stats are concerned, but the engine and how this team has been able to do what it's done had been Jalen Williams up until this point. I say the same thing about Tennessee. Dalton Connect may be the offensive leader in points, and he's a good defensive player, but Zakai Ziegler is really kind of the engine of that team. You saw the difference in that team in Tennessee with and without Zakai Ziegler last year when he went down with his injury. This year he's been healthy, and this team has really been clicking on all cylinders for the most part of this season. So going to be a tough matchup for Auburn to figure out how to disrupt what he does. He is a smaller guard, so they have big guards around him, but he is a smaller guard. But his quickness is really what allows him to be the guy that he is, and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, right? He's a guy, again, he has 5.8 assists per game, but then when you look at his turnovers per game, 2.1. So his assist to turnover ratio, being closer to almost 3 to 1 is something that you definitely want to be able to disrupt what he does. You really want to make him, even though he scores a good amount of points per game for this team, at 10, almost 11 points per game, you really want to turn him into the scorer for this team, not from 3, but as a driver, and make him finish amongst the trees, right? Not try to overhelp when he's driving, because, he's making the right decision a lot of those times. But you really want to turn Zakai Ziegler into a guy who's going to be a scorer for this team and limit other people from being able to do what they do. But we'll get more into the offense versus defense matchups. But let's talk about the Vegas lines. Of course, this show and the Vegas lines are brought to you by our folks over at BetUS, where the game begins. Let's take a look at what Vegas has. And, of course, Vegas is favoring Tennessee to win this game. 6.5 is what they're laying on the spread right now. The money line, as you see here, minus 225 in favor of Tennessee. So, and that line has been moving quite a bit, fluctuating up and down over the last 24 hours. So, of course, as always, these lines are subject to change. Right now, the team over-under for Tennessee, expecting them to score around 79.5 points. So, at 79.5, expecting Tennessee to get close to 80 points in this game, which is, listen, for a team in Auburn that surrenders closer to 67 points per game, if Tennessee's going to get close to 80, that's not a good sign for Auburn. And we'll talk in just a minute about kind of what Tennessee's done traditionally as far as their scoring versus what they do at home, which, again, most teams play better offensively at home. And then Auburn expected to score closer to 73 points in this game. The game over-under is at 152. If you guys want to make sure that you get in on the action, there's a link in the description description for you to get to our link for BetUS, and that gets you the 125% bonus at sign up when you log in there using our link in the description. And make sure that you do that, and that lets them know the War Report sent you over there, and we can get into this matchup. Again, I wouldn't bet this game if you're an Auburn fan, just because, listen, you might bet with your heart and not your head, but definitely something to consider when you're looking at the lines there of how Vegas thinks this is going to go. Let's get over into kind of more of the matchup and what we have, and let's dig into the Tennessee team, right? So Tennessee offensively this season at home, we already talked about 80 points per game on the season. They're scoring 82 points per game at home. So the Vegas line has them closer to their season average in this game. So a little respect to Auburn's defense and saying that they won't reach what their season average would be, or slightly under that season average, of putting the over-under right there. The Auburn offense is definitely going to have a say in this. What I mean by that is, how efficient is Auburn going to be offensively to keep Tennessee out of their transition game? Though Tennessee can run in the half court, and they do a good job of moving the ball around, a lot of veterans on that team. When you talk about Vescovy and you talk about Josiah Jordan-James, and I've already mentioned what you have there in Zakai Ziegler, a lot of veterans on this team to be able to go out there and handle what Auburn likes to do defensively. But Auburn needs to take care of the basketball to keep Tennessee out of transition, because that's really what fuels a lot of their ability to get the high-scoring games. Is they're shutting teams down defensively, live ball turnovers, get out in transition, and they like the transition three. Similarly, what I said about Georgia, they like to get out there and hit the transition three. When you talk about free throw percentage, they're slightly better at twos, but they're a pretty steady team when it comes to their ability to score. The only thing that you're going to see from Tennessee as far as they do much better at home is going to be, their three-point shooting at home. I won't say it's much better, but they are better at home from three by about 2%. So this Tennessee team is able to go out there and knock down the three this season. That's been last year, the reason why Tennessee had trouble was they were unable to score. That's not an issue for Tennessee this season. They are not a team that struggles to score the basketball. They have a go-to scorer, of course, in Dalton Connect, who's coming out here, and he's able to be what we call three-level scorer, 3-point tough twos in the mid-range, and he can get all the way to the rim. He is a big guard, forward for them that can go out there and present matchup issues. They're going to try to get him involved in a variety of ways. They're going to put the ball in his hands. When you look at, it's something I hadn't taken a look at, but let's just go ahead and look at that now. So Dalton Connect on the season for Tennessee he's a high usage guy. They're going to put him into ball screen action. They're going to move him off the ball. He can be a catch and shoot guy, but they're going to put the ball in his hands, particularly if it's close games down the stretch. They're going to try to isolate and get the ball into his hands. He and Zakai Ziegler are the guys that they trust with the ball in the hands late in the shot clock. That's a difference from what they were doing last season. Because, again, they didn't really have the go-to scorer. They were using a lot more of Zakai Ziegler in the pick and roll, and then they would go to Vescovy as their secondary option to be able to initiate their offense. Right now, they've got three really good trigger men that they can initiate offense out of, so it's going to be interesting to see how Auburn decides to deal with that. Last game, Auburn opted to go to a zone to be able to stop what Georgia was doing with a lot of their a lot of their one-on-one kind of man-style offense. What Georgia likes to do is get you in mismatches. What Tennessee likes to do is get you in mismatches as well. But they are going to be utilizing a lot more of a motion offense than a man offense. Now, they will get into some man, again, pick and roll style stuff with those guys late in the shot clock or late game when they just need to go get a bucket. But they're going to utilize a lot of motion, so I expect Auburn to play a little bit more of their matchup switching man defense in this game to try to be disruptive in the passing lanes to get Tennessee away from what they like to do. I actually expect also quite a few half-court traps being deployed in this one to try to disrupt. Now, Tennessee, again, a veteran team, but I expect Auburn to try to jump the ball at half-court to steal a couple of possessions in this one and hopefully force Tennessee into a few turnovers in the half-court. And Auburn wants to get out into their run game so they don't have to play against the set defense of Tennessee. So I expect a lot more of the man defense that tends to be more disruptive for Auburn to try to get away from having to deal with the Tennessee half-court defense. Now, this is not, again, that's not an easy proposition because Tennessee is a veteran team that will be able to be patient on the offensive end. But that's really, I think, the one thing that you kind of hope for if you're an Auburn fan is that they start to get impatient because Auburn is making you work for tough baskets and they're starting to, want to force some shots. The guy who has really hurt Auburn a lot over the last couple of years has been Josiah Jordan-James. He's done well against this Auburn basketball team because he's a guy who can do a lot of different things, and he does well in the medium range. In the mid-range, being able to turn and post up, I think an interesting matchup of how Auburn is going to defend him. I expect to see a couple of different bodies flying out in his direction, trying to match up with him defensively. But he poses a really difficult task for Auburn defensively. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they're able to handle him and how they're able to finish possessions. Tennessee's not one of the better offensive rebounding teams in the country, but they are physical. So Auburn's going to have to match that physicality and make sure they're not giving up the second chance points and finishing possessions. Listen, if you're forcing a miss out of this Tennessee team, you want to make sure that that's the end of that possession. So going to be interesting to see how Auburn is able to meet the physicality of Tennessee in a game that really has not gone in Auburn's favor in Thompson-Boling Arena. Flipping it over to the other side and talking about the Tennessee defense, again, this is one of the best defensive teams in the country. You're seeing a team that is holding teams to 66 points per game, just under 67 points per game. That drops to just under 60 points per game when they are in their home environment. They are suffocating at the three-point line. Teams are shooting 25, just south of 26% inside of that arena. And listen, Auburn has not been a team that's shot the ball well on the road, right? That Georgia game was kind of an anomaly this season, and they haven't done well, honestly, in back-to-back games this season, shooting the ball well. So, you're hoping that the trend line as far as how Auburn is going to shoot on the road, if you're an Auburn fan, is going to move in your direction as far as being able to consistently shoot the ball from three. Really, you only need to shoot it around 35%. I've said this multiple times this season. If you're going to shoot, in the mid-20s, which I think is a good number for Auburn to need to shoot the three, you're going to need to make 35% of those, right? So you don't have to, be a scorching 50 or 60% from three, but you need to shoot a solid percentage from three. You can't be south of 30%, and that Auburn offense work the way that it needs to. Coach Pearl likes his team to have the liberty to shoot the three-point ball, and they need to be able to feel like they can shoot that and shoot it confidently. If you're an Auburn fan, you're hoping that this team doesn't go crazy from three as far as the number of attempts, but does a good job of shooting a solid percentage. If you're getting the open looks, you need to knock those down. Guys like Denver Jones and Aiden Holloway need to be able to shoot a good percentage. Chad Baker, if he's going to be in the starting lineup again, Chad Baker-Mazara needs to go out there confidently, knock down some threes. And then you need to see the three go down from a guy like Chaney Johnson in this game. He only shot two in the last game, 1 of 2, and that's really a good percentage. Take the open shots, make half of them. You're in a good spot. Also going to be interesting to see how the rotations are going to be in this game in the front court, because again, Tennessee is going to be a team that's going to defend you really well. They defend the paint fairly well. They have a couple of guys who can bother shots in there. I wouldn't say that they're a great shot blocking team, but they're physical on the interior and they make it tough for you to make those 2-pointers. I do expect for Tennessee to do a lot of doubling, or really dig down doubles, not like true doubles where they're just going to run a man at Janai, but I expect them to kind of dig down on the post, allow him to catch in front and then dig down on the post to give help on Janai Broome. It's going to be important for Janai to make good decisions out of those double teams, which are, again, they might not be true doubles where they're going to bring a guy over and try to force the ball out of his hands. They're just going to try to bother his ability to maneuver, and they're going to be physical with him in the paint. This is a game where you're hoping that the officials are allowing Janai to move around freely because they're calling fouls on a lot of the stuff that Tennessee wants to do to disrupt his flow. We'll see how that goes with the offense and the freedom of motion. Tennessee is going to apply an immense amount of ball pressure on these guards. This is a game where your guards are going to have to be able to deal with ball pressure well, so that they can get into their offense, Auburn, more quickly. The issue for Auburn has been too late in the shot clock getting into their offense, or possessions where the ball hasn't moved very much at all because they're struggling to get into it because of the ball pressure from guards. This is going to be a game where Zakai Ziegler is going to be in your grill, right? Vescovi is going to be up in your grill. They're going to have to deal with a team that's going to apply an immense amount of pressure. And so Auburn's going to have to deal with that better than they have in other games, namely Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State this season. They're going to need to do a much better job of dealing with the ball pressure that's going to be applied by Tennessee in this game in order to survive. When you get into the matchup and you talk about keys for this game, I think it's going to come down to efficiency on offense for Auburn. Auburn needs to figure out how to be efficient. The only team that Tennessee's lost to at home this season has been South Carolina. And how South Carolina wins a lot of their games is offensive efficiency, meaning they're not going to turn the ball over a lot. They're going to be patient on offense, and they're going to make you have to be patient on defense, work it late into the shot clock, try to get quality shots, quality possessions to keep you out of your run game and out of your full court, situations on offense where you're getting into the fast break. They want to do that and slow you down so they can be able to set their defense. I think that's going to be a recipe for Auburn, is to choke the clock out and be able to limit the number of possessions, being sound on the offensive glass, going and getting multiple possessions for yourself. And because Tennessee's going to go out there again and try to be pressuring the ball heavily. When they go in contest, you need to be able to fly to the glass and go secure that board. And get a second shot attempt or a second offensive attempt for yourself. So I think the number that Auburn really needs to look at is trying to be south of really 13, 14 turnovers. If you can be south of that number, I think you'll be in a good place for yourself. And then on the opposite end, defensively, Auburn's going to need to be able to be solid against transition, right? So even if you do turn the ball over, you need to be able, or if you have a miss, you need to be solid in your transition defense, get back and get set into your half court. That seems a little counterintuitive for me to say, hey, you need to be able to crash the offensive glass and you need to be able to be in transition. That's just communication and being able to make sure that you're taking them out of their run game and not letting them get into that transition up tempo, secondary break stuff. So getting back and hustling. And this is usually where the depth of Auburn is going to come into play, where they can play ferocious defense and really fly all over the place and still be able to rotate well. How the defensive rotations or how the rotations off the bench are going to be in this game is going to be very interesting and key for Coach Bruce Pearl. This is one of those games, again, where I think you need the depth. When you look at the minutes distribution for Tennessee, they have, Ziegler's playing he's playing 30 minutes per game. Dalton Connect's almost right there at 30 minutes per game. Jordan James is at almost 29 minutes. Vescovi's playing 26 minutes. Adu's playing 24, right? So they have a team that they're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys primarily. So they have the depth, but really the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, their starting 5, are carrying a vast majority of those minutes. I expect that to be a very similar thing in this game, where they're going to want to stick with the guys that are their primaries out there. So Auburn's going to need to, this is the other thing I think is going to be key for Auburn: getting Tennessee to foul, right? You want to go to the free throw line a good bit in this game, even if you're not shooting a great percentage, which that was an issue last year when Auburn went to Tennessee. Was the free throw percentage was abysmal in that game. You shoot better free throws, you win that game despite end of game missed calls. Auburn needs to shoot a good percentage from free throw in this game, needs to get to the free throw line quite a bit, and figure out how to defend without fouling. That was something that Auburn has had a trouble with all season. Tennessee hasn't been the greatest at drawing fouls, unlike a Georgia team, but in a physical matchup like this, I expect the whistles to be probably a little less liberal, right? They're probably going to swallow their whistle a little bit in order for these teams to be able to be who they are defensively. But Auburn needs to be smart and be able to force Tennessee into fouling them a little bit more so that they can get to the free throw line. I think that's going to be another good key recipe for Auburn, is getting to the line a little bit more in this game. in order to get some free points and not have to, again, work against Tennessee's defense to do that. All right, but what I want to know is your thoughts on how you feel like this game is going to go. What are some of the keys to the game that you feel like is going to happen or need to happen for Auburn? And give me your score prediction. I'd love to see that. Again, this is brought to you by BetUS. Make sure you hit the link in the description down there, and we will be back with a post-game reaction for you guys on this one. Like the video before you get out of here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this content with somebody. Till the next time, and as always, War Eagle.